South Carolina is a beautiful state that is well known for its rich history, southern charm, and stunning natural beauty, but there are also a few cons of living here. I'm originally from Montana and relocated to South Carolina, and I'm going to give you my 12 reasons to avoid the Palmetto State. Just to be clear, I love it here and I'm not going anywhere, and I still think it's one of the best places in the country to live, but it's not for everyone. Occasional severe weather, including hurricanes, tornadoes, and thunderstorms. If you move to South Carolina, especially near the coast, you will eventually be affected by hurricanes. Just to give you an example, I've lived in Charleston for about 6 years, and for the first 2 years that I lived here, we had a hurricane evacuation both of those years. Charleston was not hit directly by either of those hurricanes, but we were in the cone of uncertainty, which meant that there was a chance Charleston would be directly hit, so we had to evacuate. The last few years, we have not had a hurricane evacuation. Although Charleston wasn't directly hit, other parts of the state were heavily affected. In 2018, Hurricane Florence made landfall in North Carolina near the North Carolina and South Carolina border. This was a relatively weak hurricane when it finally hit as a Category 1, but it was slow moving and somewhat similar to Hurricane Harvey in Texas a couple years earlier. It just sat there and dumped rain in both North Carolina and South Carolina. Hurricane Florence caused a massive amount of damage, rainfall, flooding, and there were some fatalities. Some areas received more than 20 inches of rain, and this caused many rivers to flood and dams to break. Aside from the recent hurricanes in South Carolina, I still hear stories about Hurricane Hugo over 30 years later. This hurricane devastated Charleston and South Carolina when it made landfall as a Category 4 hurricane in 1989. You do get advanced warning when a hurricane is going to hit. When we recently evacuated out of Charleston, my wife and I just took a trip to Charlotte, North Carolina for a couple of days, which is only a few hours away, and we made a little vacation out of it. A lot of people that evacuate go to much closer cities like Columbia or Greenville. These cities in South Carolina that are more inland will not be as affected by hurricanes as the coastal cities, since the storms usually weaken rapidly once they hit land, but you will still get some strong winds in these areas. We also have the possibility of tornadoes in South Carolina. We don't get as many tornadoes here as they do in states located in Tornado Alley, but like I said, I'm originally from Montana and we had almost no tornadoes in that area, so I definitely consider this a con of living here. There are also very few homes in the Charleston area that have an underground basement to take shelter in, but there are some options for an above-ground tornado shelter if you want to install one. Along with the hurricanes and tornadoes, we also get a lot of thunderstorms in South Carolina. There are certain times of the year during the summer where it seems like we have a thunderstorm and heavy rain every day, and many of these occur right over your home, and sometimes it is so close that it rattles your house. So this is also something for you to consider, especially if you have pets that are afraid of loud noises. Heat and humidity. This is my least favorite thing about living in South Carolina. It doesn't matter which part of South Carolina that you live, you're going to be affected by heat and humidity certain times of the year. In my opinion, the summer months are the worst time of the year to live in South Carolina, especially in July and August. The temperature is not that high compared to other areas. Most days are in the 80s or low 90s, but the humidity is what makes it so uncomfortable. It is very difficult to be outside during these months, but there are still some things that you can do. If you can be somewhere where you are getting a nice breeze, like the beach or Charleston Harbor, the heat is much more tolerable. We get most of our tourists during the summer months in Charleston, and a lot of these people are spending time on the beaches, where there is usually a nice breeze coming from the ocean. You will also notice in Charleston a distinct home design known as the Charleston Single, with the outside porches known as piazzas. Most of these homes were built in the 1700s and 1800s before there was air conditioning, and were designed and positioned to take advantage of the cool breeze coming from Charleston Harbor. A lot of people like to go boating, kayaking, or fishing during the summer months, and getting out on the water is a great way to stay cool. Due to the heat, there is also a very long pool season in South Carolina, and a lot of subdivisions here have a neighborhood pool, so if you like to go swimming, you may enjoy the summers here. All of the buildings here will have air conditioning as well, so there's still plenty to do during the summer, and I will take the hot summer months here over the long and snowy winters where I come from. Insects. There are a lot of insects in South Carolina due to the hot and humid climate. We have large spiders, fire ants, ticks, termites, and I've even seen a praying mantis, but in my opinion the two worst insects here are the mosquitoes and palmetto bugs. A palmetto bug is a roach, and they sometimes get inside your home. They are fast, and they can get to be very large. If you do move here, you can hire a pest control company to spray outside your home every few months, and this will really help keep the insects away. There are also a lot of mosquitoes where I live, and you will definitely want to buy a good amount of bug spray. When I take my dog out on a walk, I always have mosquitoes following me during the spring and summer months. If you'd like to enjoy your outdoor space, a screened-in porch is a great option to help keep the mosquitoes away. Another thing that I did not know before I moved to South Carolina is that mosquitoes can spread a potentially fatal parasite to your dogs and cats known as heartworms, and it is very important to start your animals on heartworm prevention if you move here, which is a monthly oral or topical medication. Alligators and snakes. South Carolina's abundant wetlands, ponds, and marshes are home to a diverse range of wildlife, including alligators and snakes. Some of the snakes in the area are poisonous, including the copperhead snake, cottonmouth, some different types of rattlesnakes, and the coral snake, but I've only seen a couple snakes since I've moved here. I do see alligators relatively frequently, especially in the neighborhood ponds. Most of the alligators that you will see are small, but every once in a while you may see a larger gator. Alligators are a lot faster than they look, and in some rare cases, they may try to eat your dog while you walk them, so keep a safe distance from the water. It is very rare for an alligator to attack a human, but it occasionally does happen. Most of the time, if you do not bother them, they will not bother you. One of my favorite places to visit near Charleston is Cypress Gardens, and you can take a swamp boat ride there, and there's a good chance you will see some wild alligators. They also have a couple of large alligators in captivity. Tourism. South Carolina has multiple top tourist destinations, including Charleston and Myrtle Beach. Tourism supports the local economies, but if you're going to move to one of these areas, keep in mind that there may be a lot of vehicle traffic, foot traffic, and long lines at some restaurants. In Charleston, you also have tourists taking horse carriage tours in the downtown area, which slows down traffic. During the peak tourist season in the summer, the beach towns are very busy, and you will be sitting in traffic for a while if you're trying to get on and off the barrier islands. For example, Folly Beach near Charleston has one bridge to get in and out of the town, and during the summer this bridge gets backed up. There are certain areas and beach towns in South Carolina that attract less tourists than others, and you can contact me if you'd like to discuss which options may be best for you. Traffic. I mentioned the increased traffic from tourists, but there has also been a huge increase in traffic due to people moving to South Carolina, which has been one of the most popular states to relocate in recent years. South Carolina has grown rapidly, and the infrastructure for the traffic is still very limited. Public transportation in South Carolina is also somewhat limited. If you're thinking about moving to South Carolina and need to commute to work every day, rush hour traffic is likely going to slow you down, depending on your location. Sales tax. South Carolina has a relatively high sales tax compared to other states. We have a state sales tax of 6% and a local sales tax of up to 3%, so a total sales tax of 9% in some areas, including Charleston. If you eat at a restaurant in Charleston, on top of that 9%, you'll be paying a 2% hospitality tax, making your total tax 11%. The liquor tax is an additional 5%, so if you order an alcoholic beverage at a restaurant, that will be taxed at a total of 16% in Charleston. The sales tax in South Carolina brings in a lot of revenue from all the tourists the state attracts. And the good news about taxes in South Carolina is if you're going to purchase a home here, it has one of the lowest property taxes in the nation for a primary residence. If you'd like to get an idea of what you'll be paying in property taxes, most counties have a tax estimator website. Select the 4% rate if you're going to be buying a primary residence or the 6% rate if it'll be a second home, and this will give you an idea of what you will be paying for property taxes. I will put a link in the description below for the Charleston County Tax Estimator page. Small cities. I actually consider this to be a good thing, but some people don't like it. None of the cities in South Carolina are very big, at least when comparing them to other large cities with skyscrapers like Atlanta, Miami, LA, New York, and Chicago. Some people like the big city feel, and you won't really find that in South Carolina. For example, Charleston does not allow buildings taller than the tallest church steeples here, so there are no skyscrapers. Columbia does have some taller buildings, as does Myrtle Beach, so if you're looking for a big city atmosphere, these will probably be the closest cities you can find in South Carolina. Also, Rock Hill is located about 30 minutes away from Charlotte, North Carolina, which is a very nice bigger city, and one of my favorite places to visit. If you would like more information about different areas to live in South Carolina, be sure to watch my video about the 7 areas people are moving to here in South Carolina on my website at garrisoncharleston.com or my YouTube channel, and I'll put a link in the description below. Lack of seasonal changes. If you enjoy having 4 seasons every year, beautiful fall colors, and would like to have a white Christmas, South Carolina may not be a good option for you, at least along the coast. In Charleston, I've only seen the snow stick to the ground a couple of times since I've lived here, and we don't get the beautiful fall colors that you will see in some other areas. Parts of the Midlands and upstate regions near Greenville and Spartanburg will have a little bit cooler winters, and they do get some snow, so if you're looking for seasonal changes, this part of South Carolina may be a good option for you. Pollen and allergies. If you have seasonal allergies like I do, then you're going to want to stock up on allergy medications in South Carolina. I take antihistamines frequently, but I also had to do this in Montana, especially during the spring and summer, so for me it's similar to what I was already used to. There is more visible pollen here than I've ever seen, at least for a couple weeks out of the year. Everything outside gets covered in green pollen, including your cars and patio furniture. This is a very bad time of the year for my allergies, and you may also want to invest in a pressure washer for your outside space. Flooding. Another con about living in South Carolina is the potential for flooding, especially in the low country. This area gets its name because it's very low-lying land. It is flat here and sits right near sea level. As I mentioned earlier, flooding can occur during a hurricane, but we also get occasional flooding from heavy rains, especially when it rains during a high tide. A lot of these areas near water, including rivers and creeks, are more likely to flood. Certain roads on the Charleston Peninsula are prone to flooding at times as well, and sometimes the roads are so flooded that you should not be driving through them. There have been a couple times that I've seen cars attempting to drive through the high water and stalling. If you purchase a home here, you may be required to have flood insurance, depending on where you buy. Flood insurance can vary in price from a few $100s a year to thousands of dollars per year. But flood insurance on newer homes is usually very affordable, since most homes have been elevated if necessary. Flood insurance may be very expensive on old historic homes, since a lot of them have not been elevated. If you'd like to get an idea of the flood zones around here, you can look at the FEMA flood zone maps online, and I'll put a link in the description below. Flood Zone X is the area least likely to flood. If you are purchasing a property, it is important to get an elevation certificate for the property and talk to an insurance agent to get an estimate for flood insurance. Some people that live in the X flood zone also get flood insurance, even though it's not required, since flooding is still a possibility everywhere in this area, especially if we get another hurricane that dumps rain on us. Low housing inventory. South Carolina has been one of the most popular states in the country to relocate in recent years, and with all the people moving here, there is still a lot of demand for housing. Median home prices in South Carolina is below the national average, but in some areas, including Charleston County, it is above the national average, and South Carolina has relatively low wages as well. The fiscal and monetary policies of the United States over the past couple of decades, with artificially low interest rates, quantitative easing, expansion of the money supply, and debt monetization has led to the very predictable consequence of price inflation. The Federal Reserve has had to quickly raise interest rates to combat the inflation. In this higher interest rate environment, a 30-year mortgage will now be much more expensive than it was a couple of years ago. So there are a lot of people that are not going to sell their homes that otherwise may have, because if they want to move and buy another home, their mortgage payment is going to be much more expensive due to the higher interest rates. Because of this, a lot of people are just staying where they are, so the inventory of houses for sale is staying low. However, this is also happening in other areas around the country, not just South Carolina. Alright, those were my reasons to avoid South Carolina. Even with all the cons of living here, I still think it's a great place to live. If you think you can handle everything I listed in this video, and you're still considering moving to South Carolina, you can feel free to contact me anytime at 843-769-1836 or email me at markgarrisonrealestate@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have about moving to this area. Thanks for watching.